Welcome to the buy list. This is episode 29.
This is not financial advice. This is cardboard.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet there.
Got him.
What's up, Nate?
That's the episode. I hit my camera. We're done. We're done. We retire.
Calling it. Quick one tonight.
Not a whole lot. Get boxes tomorrow and open a metric poop load of boxes. So that is basically my week.
Yep, that's pretty cool. I returning to streaming tomorrow, doing just probably a light stream, doing some opening up the last box of HP1 Black Border I have, an Italian box. And then Friday is when I start opening product on Dust Till Dawn product on stream. So that'll be fun. Big hype. I have 3 cases to rip through minimum right now. And then I'm going to spend all weekend and try to develop a draft. There is enough slots this time, so that is nice. So drafts will be back on TCG Dead. That's cool. Yeah. So how are your pre-releases?
Good. I went to 2. I won both of them. I went 3-0 with Prism. I was the 1 Prism in our pod, so easy clap. And then
we had 1 Prism.
1 Prism. all the heralds.
Whoa.
When you get a red herald of red Wartune Herald pick 12, you know you're sitting pretty.
Yeah. Wow. I was able to go to 1 pre-release. It was an 11-man pod, so it was kind of the 11-man, like 8+ pods are rough. Like 9's like kind of like you, because it's like you can tell right away, but like once you get over 10, man, it is so tough. I was picking up some like what I thought was pretty fire chain cards. I got a Shadow of Ursa, I got a Soul Reaping. I had 4 other poppers than that. On top of that, generic poppers. So I was like, oh my god, I had a couple red boundings. I didn't see a lot of seeds, so I was like, oh, there's another chain in there. And turns out there was 2 more chains in this giant pod, and I played both of them and got out shackled. Like straight up, I was like, this just comes down to who shackles better. And my opponent didn't miss. I was like, So that was tough. So I O2'd and then got the bye win. So walked away with a couple packs of Dust of Dawn. But yeah, that was tough to stomach, because I was like, this chain deck is pretty good. I'm feeling good about this, and then I was just like, oh no. And that's how she goes. So yep. All right, Nate, let's jump into it. So back to our normal episodes here, deep diving. Let's see what we got. First up, Miraging Metamorph.
Yeah, so there's a lot. I mean, you look at pretty much the entire Flesh and Blood market, and cards are too cheap.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look, you find cards that are undervalued. So we're gonna.
Yeah, the theme of tonight's episode is we picked out cards that break that trend, because it's way too easy to be like, go buy Enlightened Strikes. They're $26. Yeah.
All right. To the 24 people who bought Miraging Metamorph over the past 7 days, did you miss spoiler season? Like, this card doesn't say Herald on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make an angel baby. This card's bad. Why is it $16? It's the most expensive Majestic from Everfest, and I don't understand. It's barely it. You can play it in Prism. I'll give you that, but I don't even think Prism's playable. So like maybe you can't, because the hero's unplayable. And like you can play it in like Redline Dromai, but I don't know if you guys have watched any other episodes before, but Dromai's unplayable as well. So like
Oldhim just left card. Though.
Huh?
Yeah. No, I was just making a joke that Oldhim left. But yeah, so Miraging Metamorph, I mean, I kind of see where you're going with this. Maybe there's a thought on you can Luminaris. Well, no, because you have to pay for Luminaris, then pay for the Herald, then pay for this. Yeah, very expensive. And you have 32 health, so you can't just tank a bunch of damage to make that, to throw 14 or something with like a Wartune. So yeah, I see where you're going with this one. looking at the data too, like this chart is really wonky, Nate. Like back in May, it just jumped over 30 for like a couple days, and it's like
Well,
retraced.
that was when we found out Prism was coming back, right?
Yes, yeah, that's true. That is about that time.
So, in the all the news since then has basically told everyone card bad, unplayable, should not be played
Yep.
because it doesn't fit into the hero and what they want to do. I think this Prism actually wants a lot of blues,
Hmm.
and you're already pumping your deck full of a bunch of like non-block figments, and then you're also going to want to play like the normal auras and stuff. But like, what the heck's this card doing in there? It doesn't go in the soul, which it like
Yeah.
Prism is gonna be y'all thought Bolton was so hungry? Just wait and see. That
Yeah.
girl can eat.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
like
sure.
it ain't it. I'm sorry, everybody. Like shouldn't be $16. It's gonna go down.
Yeah.
Not financial advice. Sell it.
You're right. Yeah, I tend to agree with you this. Yeah, this is $16 is a hard pill to swallow right now. Sell and or be happy you have your place. Do not buy at this moment.
Nope.
All right, Nate. Let's jump over to our second card. Gaze the Ages.
Yeah, what? Like you look at this graph. Look at this graph right here.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, Gaze the Ages was deceased on the table
It was
in the
dying
coroner's
too.
office. In the huh?
Like it was dying right before this big like push,
Yeah.
right? It was like
It was
$8. It looks like it dropped under 5, and then all of a sudden someone decided, or like Imagine Bay did top 8 at the Battle Hard in Los Angeles with this card in his deck, I believe. I did not fact check that.
You did not. That's actually false. Ted just lied to everyone.
This wasn't
No,
in his deck?
it's definitely in his
Oh,
deck. It's
okay,
a
I was gonna
Kano card.
say, yeah. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure Kano always plays this, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like someone woke up and then put like bath salts in Kano's Cheerios and like bam, it just
Yeah.
popped up and then it crashed real hard because
Yeah.
it's only a Kano card. And like unless your brain is the size of Mississippi, like you're probably not playing Kano.
Yeah.
So, like, this card's rather restrictive. I know that this card was not reprinted in HP1, which I think is why
Mm.
a lot of like you might see spikes here and there of this card, but this card's going to come back down when Kano isn't the flavor of the month and people realize they ain't as smart as they think they are.
Yeah, the thing to note about this is I think we've seen this before on other cards, Nate, is that current listings are at like eighth card.
Yep.
Like they might be some more extra quantities in there, but it's like under 20 for sure.
Yeah,
But
there's not
yeah,
a lot
the
listed.
listings are 8 total. So yeah, it doesn't take much, right? If someone buys a playset, that's quite a big chunk of the what's out on TCG players. So you see those fluctuate, and there's no white border like you had mentioned,
Yeah.
so there's no like really there's no safety valve on this card. So people just need to I would imagine stock increases on this card on TCG player.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of got their eyes focused on like the Dust Till Dawn release, and then when we realized that we're like, Daisy Ages? What?
What
It
happened?
was like nobody's paying attention to this card. Like, it, and that's the thing. Like, 7 have sold in the last 7 days. So, like, someone must have just like literally removed their inventory for this
Yeah.
card, the spike, or the inventory was already that thin.
Yeah.
I don't see this being the most expensive Majestic from Crew ever, even if it didn't get a reprint in HP1.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. All right. Let's next card up here, Rattle Bones. I kind of was keying in on this one. Got a little
Crazy
slump.
demon lady.
Yeah. So this one's interesting because I don't think this one is as clear cut as our previous cards, Nate. This does have playability in Vincent. And I think that's why we see it at $16. You can see here at the graph, right? It's kind of always peaked, 10 peaks up to 15. So it's kind of lived in this area for a while now. But trending upwards, I would say. If you snap the trend line on this graph, you'd see it going upwards. This one's tough, right? Because I can see Vincent not playing this. There's already Nebula Blade is too expensive. This could be too expensive with Nebula Blade. With Thorn, maybe it could work. Maybe if you're running Flail, you can make it work. There are play lines. I think we talked about it a little bit pre-show, and you were like, "Well, there are lines to make this work," and there are. So it's I guess what I'm saying is it's probably really early in Vincent to know if $16 is going to stick, or by the time we get through our first couple battle hardens and get into Nats, maybe the leading Vincents don't play this, and then it drops back down to like 10-ish.
Yeah, there's just not a lot listed.
That also, yeah.
And there is some stuff. I think this could be a pretty good card. It blocks 3,
Hmm.
and she has a way to force through arcane damage, which activates this card, and you can go pull back any number of things, and it kind of fits within her wheelhouse of like how she wants to use her resources. If you're operating off of a blue, your rune gate card's free. You pitch your blue, your Rattle Bones. You go get like a 1 cost, whether it's like Meet and Greet, Spellblade Strike, what have you, um, and then just kind of like end on a rune chant after you've already rune gated.
Hmm.
It's in one of my lists, and it's I've liked how it's played sometimes, and then other times it just blocks 3, which is fine. But then
Yeah.
other times it's very bad, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting card. I don't know where it ends up. I think this is a card that could go up or down depending on Vincent's builds mostly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's playable. Just don't know if it's just, yeah, too early to know if it sticks in the most optimized version of Vincent, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I marked this one as a hold. Use caution. Now, if you're a diehard Vincent player, you don't have these, maybe you just bite the bullet. You probably end up, worst case, you probably end up, as you can see from the graph, right? $10 is probably where it would fall to. Again, no reprint on HP1, so no white border safety valve, just like Gaze. Um, so you lose $15 maybe if it drops to $10 on your playset if you buy them now, 15 to 18. But again,
Do
if
we
you're just like want to dabble in Vincent, probably get away with not picking these up right now.
do we think that potentially they hit some of these cards like Rattlebones and Gaze in HP2?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, they definitely
they haven't
could.
done the English yet. They did foreign to give like foreign language, so they have basically all of their sets
Yeah.
in their native language. I think outside of Uprising would be the only set that they don't have in their native language.
Hmm.
Um, because I mean, it's not like the sets are draftable. It
No, yeah.
basically you're just opening packs to acquire cardboard. So do they? It'll be interesting to see, do they hit that to
Go, yeah,
if
outside of the block, right?
yeah,
Like
I don't think they're gonna be like restricted
2 blocks of product.
to
Yeah.
blocks. I think like it was convenient that they hit the first block because it was all out of print. Do they look at not just like, I mean, if you print HP2, like
Oh my
you got to
God.
basically skip tails because that thing's got
Toxic.
HP2, 3, and 4 already printed in unlimited,
Yeah.
um, and Everfest. Like the only thing you would want to hit is like Monarch and some of the stuff you missed in HP1, and maybe
Yeah.
some more stuff from HP1. Like maybe you run it back with like CNCs and Tunics because like listen, Tunic is still pretty expensive. So like, do you just
Hmm.
run that back and then maybe you reach out to Uprising and hit Crown again? Like, I
Yeah.
don't even know if HP2 can get printed the complete. I think they just reprint
Yeah.
HP1 and just call it HP1 the remix, and then just add
Yeah.
Rattlebones and Gaze back in.
Yeah, I think Gaze and Rattle Bones are an interesting, like you bring up an interesting point, because I definitely think these two cards are kind of surprising, that were left out of HP1 white border. Because Rattle Bones, I mean, straight up, it's playable in Viz until the day he LLs, right? And then it's
Yep.
possibly playable in Vincent.
Yeah.
So like there's a need for this card, and it's good enough to be reprinted as a white border card, I guess is what I'm saying. And Gaze is the same way, right? It's Kano Kano staple. So
Yeah. And Magnetic Shockwave also wasn't hit in HP1,
that's true.
which
Yes.
is also a very expensive Majestic right now too. I think all the other cards that were not touched in HP1 are utter garbage.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Absorption Dome. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
That's
ain't playable.
yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
worry, we ain't reprinting you ever. You're Gucci.
Yeah.
Um, I guess that kind of like segues into our next one, which is gonna be a real
Mm.
tough conversation.
Yeah.
Like,
We've kind of avoided this conversation for a minute for since we started this podcast, I think, right?
yeah, yeah, we haven't really touched on Fables at all, and their place in Flesh and Blood, and how they make they're the super chase. They're the chase of every set, and when there's a playable Fable, and especially an older playable Fable, the prices are high, and it's a one of
Mm-hmm.
in a deck, so typically it's not as big of a deal. But as we continue to grow as a community and a game, these prices will continue to go up. I think
Yeah.
we have Heart up here, but and I actually think Heart's kind of like a little too pricey right now. Oldhim's gone
Yep.
in both formats. By Felicia. And Icelander's basically dead.
Mm-hmm.
She's basically out the pasture too. So I don't know where this card's getting play because nothing's really taking games that long anymore. And typically, you would want Heart if you were like Dories were running against Old Hymns to just kind of get some extra like extension into them. But I don't know what deck wants to run Heart anymore. Like games aren't
Mm-hmm.
going that long. And the other fable would be like I guess the fables from the first three blocks are the most interesting to talk about. You have
Yeah.
Isla Theia.
I think just before you to cut you off, and I think
Yeah.
what you're trying to say, Nate, is I think that the problem that we're about to get into has been fixed by Fab 2.0.
Yes.
The way they've done it now, where there's a rainbow foil version and a cold foil version, I don't think you ever see a Eye of Ophidia, Heart of Fyendal, even Arknight Shard issue that we're gonna dive into.
I again I think it's like a time thing, but I think we could like in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, yeah.
I think that like we're you think about like Plague Hive. Plague Hive is a very good card. 5
Hmm.
years from now, that's gonna need to get reprinted.
Yeah.
Like if as the game grows and develops, like those will be removed from circulation. They're not going to print outsiders anymore. And if the game continues to chug along like we have been, these are cards that need to be reprinted
Hmm.
um, to maintain a healthy, growing community and a competitive community
Yeah.
as well. Because especially I's at 550 now, and like that price isn't getting throttled down by anything.
Yeah.
So if there's multiple decks that want to run I in their competitive decks, like competitive players don't really think twice about like getting a card that goes to an event because you're spending $500 going to an event to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah.
It just that card could go to 1,000, and then people will start thinking about like I've got to
Yeah.
spend I got to spend $500 to fly to the event. I'm gonna spend a couple $100 on hotel, and then I got to spend $1,000 just on one card to go in my deck. It's
Hmm.
gonna start to make people think twice about going to these bigger events because that's a pretty exorbitant cost for a lot of people. So I think,
Yeah. I think it's even more just perception too. It's not
yeah,
even like I don't even think it's like let's be clear. These three cards we're talking about, the first cycle fables, we can talk about Heart because it's on the screen. These are not like 15% win percentage plus cards, right? It's not like you're um it's not gaining you a whole lot. We're talking about thin margins here. And yes, when you're playing at Nats or you're playing in a calling, that does matter, and it matters. It matters to the players that are playing these cards, right? To even just have that knowledge of, okay, I have the best 60 cards or whatever I'm presented,
yeah,
that I think these are the best cards, right? And that includes a Hard, that includes an Eye. But you know, the next person sitting next to you is just there to have fun and play the game. But when you're talking about cards reaching $600-700 for one card, even that person that's having fun just playing like the pile that they put together kind of cringes at that, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's a perception thing more than it is a comp- it, I think the perception goes past the competitive, but they're both issues, right?
It I mean, there was that video that kind of, like, compared all of, like, the top 5 meta decks across several games and
Hmm.
showed that Fab even though that video was, like, a little bit off,
Yeah,
you saw the response to a lot of people, both Fab and non-Fab players, like,
yeah,
if you're someone sitting on the outside thinking about joining Fab and you see something like that, you're like, $2,000
yeah,
for a for the best deck?
yeah,
Like, but I could play Pokemans and I could attack with my Pikachu and my deck's $35. So I think that a reprint is necessary. I trust that LSS will handle it well. Like, I think that they are very intentional when like that is the one thing I like about LSS is that they are very intentional when they do reprint cards
yeah,
because it's they don't want to destabilize the market because they understand that like the underpinning to any good game is like for them especially is them selling boxes. If there's no secondary market, they cannot sell boxes.
yeah.
So if they destroy the secondary market for collectors and players,
Yeah.
game dies, right?
Mhm.
So we've seen very few reprints, and I've been a part of games that basically will like card hits like $70, freaking give it out as an armory promo, and it's just like
Well,
people
yeah.
people spend people spend $200 on a playset, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, we get that for free next month. Like that really hurts their confidence.
Yeah, and these cards, that's one of the problems with these cards, Nate, is that a Heart of Fyendal, Eye of Ophidia, and a art, the Shard. I own these cards, and I haven't ever even sleeved them up in a deck. I mean, I will if I have to, but there's a collector's side to this first block as well, right? For me right now, they're collector's items. To say that I own a version of every fabled in the game. So it's like a tug of war here. So you have competitive decks, just they've left the meta as you mentioned that use heart, that want this card, and then you have people that just want to own the card to say they have it. Beautiful cards. The gym concept is amazing, so like they're highly collectible. So you're kind of fight. I think LSS is in a unique spot here because you can't just reprint these willy nilly. Like you said, you have to be very careful with these, right? If it's like an HP1 product, of course, non-foiled, and then the fabled is one of the three, like they did in Black Border,
Yeah,
in the alt languages. That's one way I think they could do it, where it's like doesn't destroy um, doesn't destroy the secondary market of the originals. But they got to be very careful.
yeah. I think that you look. I don't. This is like tinfoil hat theory. I think they are very unhappy with how Arknight Skullcap performed in its reprint.
Mm,
Um, and I think that's why they put Crowd of Providence next to 7 other legendaries, is try to dilute the populace that's
mhm.
getting introduced to the market with the already existing populace. Because it's simple supply and demand. Like, if they just released 1,000,000 non-foil Heart of Fyendals today, the prices would tank. And
Yeah.
obviously not 1,000,000, but, like, if they made it,
Hmm.
very easy to get these cards, but if they, like, slowly trickled in supply, like you said, like, maybe an HP2, they reprinted all the Fables in non-foil,
Yeah.
and
So
that's
it's like
across
one
all
of
of them.
seven or one of 10, right? And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden now it's very hard to get a heart. Exactly a heart.
yes, it's very hard to get all of them,
Hmm.
but it makes it so, like, you make the pull rates pretty high, but there should be a cheaper option introduced to the market, which should have a slight pull on the rainbow foil market and introduce a lower price point
Yeah.
for players as well. Because there's also going to be collectors who want the non-foils. Like,
Yeah,
I think
whiteboard or non-foil, right? I mean, that's probably the most severe variance that you can do compared to the original, right?
yeah. In you the reason I trust LSs is because they've been very intentional with this all the time. Do they miss sometimes? Yes. The non-foil EA Heralds, I think, is one of the worst decisions they've made. That's such a weird
I
I
don't
don't know
know
why
what
it's
was
in this
going on
product
there.
for Dusk Till Dawn, but, like, I don't know why it was introduced. That is weird and a miss. But when surgical extractions were heavily short printed
Yeah.
in Dynasty, they acknowledged the issue and they came out with a solution.
Hmm.
And the solution was not slap them in armory kits and give them away to everybody, because that would just completely tank the value of, surgical extractions and Dynasty as a product. But to introduce the supply into Dust Till Dawn as well, to, again, slowly trickle it into the market, to not completely just
Yeah.
overwhelm the market all at once, because there's no recovering once the market's overwhelmed all at once. It takes a long time for that to
Yeah.
work its way back. It's almost like the Monarch situation where, like, prices ballooned and then people realized that, "Oh, there's actually way more than we ever thought." And then it was just the supply just crushed the market, and it took,
Hmm.
like, over a year for the market to kinda, like,
Yeah. And a
wake up
new product.
and a new product,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
which some people, aren't too happy about, but, um, I think this is a product that'll definitely, I think Dust Till Dawn is definitely a product that will grow on people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I mean, it's interesting. I'll put it that way. I don't know if we have to. Maybe that's a subject for another video. Um, but yeah, I mean, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes, right? I don't think they necessarily have to be. They might need to be planning for how they're going to be doing this. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a plan in place, right? Talking through it with you here, Nate. I think probably the reprint all Fableds in an HP2 product. Um, non-foil whiteboarder that might, I guess all Fableds up to a certain point, right? You can't be reprinting Light of Soul or anything like that right away.
Yeah, yeah,
Even next year, right? You don't do that, but maybe there's up to a certain point, like up to library or whatnot, and kind of make them pretty hard to pull in those sets so that you don't flood things. But
yeah, yeah, it's definitely interesting thing to think about, and, like, I don't want everyone's cards to be worth 0. I want everyone's cards to be worth exactly what they paid for them.
right, yeah,
Um, but I also want new players to not be discouraged from trying out such an amazing
yeah.
game, and give them an entry point into, Flesh and Blood at a better price point so they can, like, grow into players and then collectors and investors.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, and you mentioned it, right? There was that breakdown of what all these different TCGs cost to enter right now. And my Twitter was like filled with people I normally don't follow, right? Twitter aggregates a bunch of tweets for me. And it was kind of unfortunate. Like I said, that's why I wanted to bring up that perception because that's very important in this discussion. Is that it was unfortunate to see people be like, wow, I knew Flesh and Blood was expensive, but look at that. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh, the data was a little bit wonky, right? The content creator that put it out, he wasn't well versed in how Flesh and Blood works, unfortunately. So there were some misconceptions there. But to be fair, Flesh and Blood, when you pick the metas, the the most meta deck, right? It is not cheap. And that's why we're doing the budget list, right? Is we're
yeah.
trying to show that you can be competitive in this game and
All in
still,
on a budget.
yeah, and be on a budget too. So,
All in on a
and
budget.
we've got some great feedback from that, and I'm happy to see that, even if I even, you know like a couple new people pick up those decks and just see what they like, and then that's how this game needs to grow and get rid of those perceptions of you have to spend $1,000 to play this game no matter what you do. It's like, ugh, not
Yep.
really. Like this game is pretty cheap when you if you really just want to start throwing cards, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% agree, and you definitely hit on it. That's why we did the ballin' on a budget segment.
Yeah.
Um, And it's really cool to see the feedback from the community already, and we're looking to start doing more of those again now that Dust Till Dawn's dropped, and we kind of have a full idea of what the meta's gonna look
Mm-hmm.
like. And cards prices are now shifting as well. So
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. It would be kind of it's gonna have to take a little bit of a break as the new meta shapes because we don't want to put out a budget deck that just kind of gets whomped, right? Or the prices aren't quite right. So we got to let that shift around and see what the meta looks like to kind of tailor those decks so that they're armory worthy, right? It is
100%.
one of our tenets of those videos is that it has to be armory worthy.
Yep,
So all right, Nate. That's gonna do it. Wow, we hit on Fabled finally.
we did it.
We did
We
it.
went where no man, woman, or child has gone before.
Yeah. Actually, we just repeated the conversations that everyone's been having for 8 months since Icelander made Heart ridiculously expensive.
Sure,
But that's
but we're
okay.
cuter.
That's okay. I think, yeah, it's a conversation that needs to happen, right? Because
Yep,
unfortunately, when you say reprinting Fableds, people really clamp up, which I
yep.
don't blame them because, like you said, I don't want people's cards to be worth $0. I own these cards, you own these cards.
Mhm.
Let's be careful out there, right? Like,
Yeah. I
so
have 3 Arknight shards. Moon that baby, but also
no,
make an affordable copy for new
yes.
players.
Yeah, I would actually to be honest, I wouldn't mind playing with non-foils when I go to play with them, right? So,
Actually, yeah, as a competitive player, I rather have non-foils too for my decks.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, all right, Nate, I think that's going to do it. Yeah. Thanks
yeah.
for watching, everybody, and subscribing. Please subscribe if you haven't. Ring the bell so that you know when these videos go live. And leave some comments. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Fabled situation down below. And we'll see you next time. Peace.